All right, everybody, welcome back. Today, we're going to be tackling something that I know is on a lot of people's minds lately.
For sure.
Inflation. You know that sneaky feeling that your dollar just isn't going as far as it used to?
Yeah, definitely a hot topic.
Yeah, we're going to break it all down.
Ugh,
What it is, how it's impacting you and your money, and what you can actually do about it.
sounds good.
I'm excited to dig into it.
Me too.
We have some fascinating source material here, and I think it'll really help us get to the bottom of all this.
All right, let's do it.
Now, one thing that really jumped out at me is this idea that there are actually different types of inflation.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I just thought it was like one big bad monster, but apparently it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah, it definitely is.
So can you break down these different inflation flavors for me? I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, so thinking about it in terms of types is really helpful for understanding what's actually driving those price changes you see.
Okay.
So let's start with demand pull inflation. This one's really about that classic supply and demand thing.
Right.
Like if everyone suddenly wants the latest gadget,
Uh-huh.
but there just aren't enough to go around,
What happens then?
well, the price goes up.
Makes sense.
Sellers can charge more because they know people are going to pay it to get their hands on it.
Right, like those concert tickets everyone's trying to snag.
Exactly. And a little bit of this can actually be a good thing.
Really?
Yeah, it can be a sign of a healthy economy.
Yeah.
People have jobs, they're spending money, and businesses are doing well.
But
But if that demand gets too strong, then things can get out of control.
oh,
Prices climb rapidly, and that everyday cup of coffee starts costing you a small fortune.
yeah, I've definitely noticed my coffee getting more expensive.
It's that demand pull inflation at work.
So it's like a delicate balance then.
Exactly.
A little bit of demand pull is good, but too much can really spiral.
You got it.
Now, what about those times when it's not just demand driving prices up, but like the actual cost of making things is increasing? I'm thinking about all those headlines about oil prices and supply chain issues and all that.
Yeah, that's where cost push inflation comes in.
Okay.
Think about it like this.
Right.
The ingredients for your favorite pizza.
Oh, no. Don't tell me pizza's getting more expensive, too.
Well, if the flour, the cheese, the gas for delivery all get more expensive,
Then my pizza's going to cost more, too.
sadly, yes.
Ugh.
The restaurant has to raise prices to cover those increased costs.
Makes sense, I guess.
And it's not just pizza, of course.
Right.
This happens with everything from clothes to cars to electronics. When those core production costs go up, businesses have to pass those increases on to us, the consumers.
So we've got demand on one side pulling prices up, and then we've got these rising costs on the other side pushing prices up too.
It's a double whammy.
But you know what? There's actually another type of inflation we haven't talked about yet.
That's right.
Our source material called it built-in inflation.
Yep.
I'm really curious about this one.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
This one's all about expectations.
Okay.
Imagine you're a worker and you see prices going up everywhere.
Yeah,
You're going to start thinking, hey, I need a raise to keep up with the cost of living,
for sure.
right? And when workers across the board are demanding higher wages, businesses have to adjust.
By raising their prices.
Exactly, which leads to workers demanding even higher wages, and it just keeps going.
Like a vicious cycle.
It really is.
So it's not just about supply and demand or production costs.
Right.
Our own psychology, our own expectations actually play a role in this whole inflation game.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's kind of mind-blowing. So we've got these three inflation villains on the loose demand pull, cost push, and built-in, and they're all eating away at our purchasing power.
That's a great way to put it.
So what do we do about it? I know a lot of folks listening are feeling the pinch right now, and they're wondering how to protect their money.
Absolutely. A lot of people are concerned about this.
So where do we even start?
Well, the good news is there are tools and strategies we can use to fight back against inflation.
Okay, that's reassuring.
It's not about panicking. It's about being informed and proactive.
I like that approach.
So let's get into it. What are some of the things we can do to protect ourselves?
Sounds good. Let's dive in.
So we were talking about some things we can do to, actually take action and fight back against inflation.
Right, because it's one thing to understand it, but then what do you do?
Exactly. So before the break, we talked about budgeting.
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, budgeting sounds kind of like a diet for your money.
Yeah, like no fun at all.
It's funny you say that because I think a lot of the resistance to budgeting comes from that idea that it's about deprivation,
Yeah,
Like you can't spend money on anything fun,
right.
but it really doesn't have to be that way.
So how can we reframe that? How can we make budgeting more about empowerment?
Good question. Imagine it less like a diet and more like a fitness plan for your finances.
Okay. I like that.
So you're not starving yourself. You're making conscious choices about where you want your money to go.
Right, so you can reach your goals.
Exactly. Whether that's financial freedom, early retirement, or just feeling more secure and in control of your money.
Right, like you're building financial muscle.
Yeah, exactly. But even with the best intentions, actually sticking to a budget can be tough.
For sure.
Mm.
It's easy to say you're going to do it, but then life happens.
Right. So any tips for making it less daunting?
Yeah, any advice is welcome.
Absolutely. One of the biggest mistakes I see is people trying to do too much at once.
Oh, yeah, like going from 0 to 60.
Exactly. Trying to overhaul their entire spending overnight. That's a recipe for burnout.
Yeah, you'll just give up.
Right. So instead, start small. Focus on one or two areas where you could make some adjustments.
Okay, that makes sense.
Maybe it's eating out less or finding ways to cut your grocery bill.
Yeah, I've actually gotten pretty good at finding coupons online.
There you go. Every little bit helps.
Exactly.
And there are so many resources out there these days to help you budget.
Yeah, like what kind of things?
Budgeting apps, spreadsheets, even just a good old-fashioned notebook.
It's kind of nice to go back to basics sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. The key is to find what works for you, a system that's easy to use and helps you track your progress.
So it's not one size fits all.
Definitely not. And don't be afraid to experiment. What works for one person might not work for someone else.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance between discipline and, actually being able to stick to it.
Exactly, because if it feels like a constant struggle, you're going to give up.
Yeah, exactly. Now, speaking of adjustments, we've talked about diversifying our investments to protect against inflation.
Right.
But I'll be honest, it's still a little fuzzy for me. How do you actually do that? How do you build a diversified portfolio?
It might sound complicated, but it's really simpler than you think.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
It all starts with understanding your own financial goals and your risk tolerance.
Right, like what am I actually saving for?
Exactly. Are you saving for retirement way down the road, or are you hoping to buy a house in the next few years?
Huge difference.
Right. And how comfortable are you with some ups and downs in your investments?
Yeah, some people are more risk averse than others.
Exactly. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about tailoring your investments to your own needs and your own situation.
So it's personalized, basically.
Yes. And luckily, there are a lot of resources out there to help you figure it all out.
Like what kind of resources?
Financial advisors, online tools, even books and podcasts like this one.
There you go. We're here to help.
But no matter what your goals are or how much risk you're comfortable with, a well-diversified portfolio usually includes a mix of different things.
Like what?
Stocks, bonds, real estate, maybe even some commodities or precious metals if you're feeling adventurous.
So it's like a financial buffet.
I like that. A little bit of everything to keep things balanced.
And interesting.
Right. And remember, diversification isn't just about the types of assets. It's about spreading your risk within each asset class, too.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Sure. So with stocks, instead of putting all your money into one company, you'd invest in a variety of companies across different industries.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. So spread the risk, mix things up, and tailor your portfolio to you.
Okay, got it. Now, we've talked a lot about what to do and how to do it,
Right.
but I think it's important to also talk about why people should care about all this.
Good point.
Yeah.
It's easy to get lost in the details.
Yeah. Because sometimes inflation can feel like this abstract concept,
Yeah.
but it actually has a very real impact on our daily lives.
It does. It's easy to ignore when it's just a few cents here and there.
Yeah, you don't really notice it at first.
But it adds up.
And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, my grocery bill is way higher than it used to be.
Exactly. And it's not just about that immediate impact on our wallets.
Right.
Over time, inflation can really erode our purchasing power.
What does that mean?
It means your money is literally buying less.
Oh.
And that makes it harder to achieve our long-term goals.
Like saving for retirement.
Exactly. If your money isn't growing at least as fast as inflation, you'll need to save even more to maintain your standard of living in the future.
So it's like running on a treadmill.
Yeah, good analogy. You're putting in the effort, but you're not actually getting anywhere.
So it's not just about being financially savvy.
Right?
It's about making sure your hard-earned money keeps its value over time.
Exactly. You want your money to work for you, not against you.
Now, something that really intrigued me in our research is this idea that inflation can actually create opportunities.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's not all doom and gloom.
So tell me, where are these silver linings? Where can we find opportunity in a world of rising prices?
Well, think about businesses that actually benefit from inflation.
Like what kind of businesses?
Companies that produce essential goods and services, things people need no matter what.
So even if prices go up, people are still going to buy those things.
Exactly. So they often see increased demand during inflationary periods. So if you're smart, you can potentially find investments in those companies that are well positioned to thrive even when prices are rising.
So there's opportunity in the stock market, even during inflation.
Exactly. It's about being strategic and doing your research.
And it's not just about investing.
Right.
Inflation can actually push businesses to
Yes.
innovate.
Yeah, totally. When businesses face rising costs, they have to get creative and find new ways to do things more efficiently.
So it's like a forcing function for progress.
Exactly. It pushes us to adapt and come up with new solutions.
I like that. Now, this deep dive has been really insightful.
Glad to hear it.
But I'll be honest, it's also raised some questions for me personally.
Oh, yeah. What kind of questions?
Like, how do I balance investing for the long term with the fact that prices are rising right now?
Right. You need to think about both the short term and the long term.
Exactly. And how do I even know which investments are right for me? Feels kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, I understand. It's a lot to take in. That's where talking to a financial advisor can be really helpful.
So they can kind of guide you through it all.
Exactly. They can assess your individual situation, help you define your goals, and develop a plan that's right for you.
So it's like having a financial coach in your corner.
Yeah, exactly. They can help you navigate all the complexities and make informed decisions.
That takes some of the pressure off.
Right. And they can also help you stay on track because remember, investing is a marathon, not a sprint.
There's going to be ups and downs along the way.
For sure. But having a good strategy and a trusted advisor can really make a difference.
Now, before we wrap up this part of the show, I want to talk about something we haven't really touched on yet.
Okay, what's that?
The psychological impact of inflation.
Ah, yes, that's important.
Yeah,
We often focus on the economics,
right.
but inflation really affects our emotions and behaviors too.
Yeah, because it's stressful.
It is.
Yeah.
It's natural to feel anxious when you see prices going up and your money buying less.
Yeah, it can make you feel like you're losing control.
Exactly. And those feelings can lead to bad financial decisions.
Oh, yeah, like what?
People might panic and sell their investments when they shouldn't.
Right.
Or they might try to beat inflation by spending more, which actually just makes things worse.
So how do we deal with that anxiety? How do we avoid making those rash decisions?
Well, first acknowledge those feelings. Don't try to pretend they're not there.
So it's okay to not be okay.
Exactly. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, family member, maybe even a financial therapist.
Sometimes just talking about it helps.
It really does. And remember, you're not alone in this. Inflation is affecting everyone, and there are resources available to help you cope.
Okay, so acknowledge the feelings, and then what?
Then focus on what you can control.
Like budgeting and investing wisely.
Exactly. By taking those proactive steps to protect yourself, you can feel more in control and reduce that anxiety.
So shift your focus from what you can't control to what you can control.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of a positive mindset.
Right, because it's easy to get caught up in all the negativity.
Yeah, inflation is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to learn and grow and become more resilient.
Okay, I like that reframing. It's a chance to become more financially savvy.
Exactly. Turn that challenge into an opportunity.
This has been a really great conversation.
I've enjoyed it.
We've explored the different types of inflation, how it impacts our lives, and a bunch of different ways to protect ourselves.
A lot of good information.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay, sounds good.
So, given everything we've talked about today, what's like one tiny little step our listeners can take this week to protect themselves from inflation?
That's a good question.
Like, it doesn't have to be this huge thing.
Right. I think sometimes people get overwhelmed by the whole thing.
Exactly.
They don't know where to start.
Right. It's like, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
Exactly.
So it could be something small like creating a budget or doing a little research on a potential investment.
Yeah, or even just like talking to a financial advisor just to kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah, just having that conversation can be really helpful.
Even just being more aware of where your money's going can be huge.
Oh, for sure. Like actually tracking your spending for a month can be really eye-opening.
It's amazing what you realize when you actually write it all down.
Right. So yeah, just start small, take one step, and go from there.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Small steps lead to big changes.
Exactly. It's all about building momentum.
I have to say, I'm walking away from this conversation feeling a lot less intimidated by inflation.
That's great to hear.
It's still a challenge, of course,
Yeah.
but it feels like something I can actually tackle now.
It's all about shifting that mindset from fear to proactivity.
Yeah, exactly. And that resilience is going to be key because, let's be real, inflation's probably going to be sticking around for a while.
Yeah, that's a realistic perspective. It's been a part of our economic reality for a long time.
So it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Probably not.
So instead of fearing it, we need to learn how to deal with it.
Right. Adapt to it and even find those opportunities we were talking about.
I love that. It's like making lemonade out of lemons.
Exactly. It's not always fun, but you got to make the best of it.
And I think the information we've covered today has given us the tools to do just that.
I agree.
We've broken down inflation, explored its causes and its impact, and most importantly, we've learned about all sorts of strategies to protect our money.
And even grow our wealth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to all our listeners out there, don't just let this information sit in your brain.
Right. Take action.
Do something with it. Take that one concrete step this week.
Even if it's just a small one.
Exactly. Start building that inflation-resistant financial fortress.
And remember, we're all in this together.
Yeah, share what you're learning with your friends and family.
Spread the knowledge.
Exactly. Let's all help each other out.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of inflation.
Until next time.
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay ahead of the curve.